Man, if you can be on how you serve people, the world is going to be a path to your door.
Hey, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I have a special guest, Brian Hamilton. He is with LiveSwitch, and he's also a serial entrepreneur. We'll probably get into that. Brian, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Brad.
Awesome. Before we get into all this, just give us kind of a 30,000-foot view of, what you've done in the past, what you're doing now. Just kind of give us a little brief intro into who Brian is.
All right. That's going to take a while, but all kidding aside, I've been an entrepreneur since I was about 10 years old. I was one of these annoying kids selling door to door at a very young age. Had a lawn cutting business, did landscaping to pay my way through college. When I got out of graduate school, I started a chain of coin laundromats. I sold that in my 20s. And then I started what was my big play, which was Sageworks, which I sold in 2018, a tech company. I'm running LiveSwitch now, and sort of that's where I am right now. But I've been doing this stuff my whole life.
How does one get into coin laundry at such a young age?
That's a good question. A lack of capital, actually. I got out of grad school, and my dad worked in a factory, Sikorsky, and he was shocked because he had never had the benefit, Brad, of going to college. And, he was shocked that I would go into the laundry business, but I needed capital. And they did financing of the equipment. So not only would they give you financing, but they would give you money for upfit. So I was like, that's for me because I needed the money. And it worked.
So no, this isn't really what we're talking about today, but I'm just curious. So did you start the coin laundry like from scratch? You didn't buy one or take over. You started it from scratch.
No, great question. So I started my first one on New Bern Avenue in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I actually put in the cement bulkheads by hand. With other people, obviously, but I started that business, and then I grew that into like about a 5-store chain, which I sold. I think I was about 29 when I sold that business, and then I started Sageworks. So, I've been involved in the very grassroots stuff that a lot of your listeners are probably doing.
And Sageworks, I've heard the name before, but real briefly, what was that?
Financial tech company. We claim to have been the first fintech in the U.S., but I developed a system that basically took financial statement numbers and then converted those numbers into language, plain language. And the idea was to help small businesses understand their financials and how to run their businesses better. That was a tough one because it took about 8 years to really get. We were definitely first to market, Brad, so it took time to get recognized and get adoption. But of course, that went on to become a very, successful, kind of large company. So, but it wasn't easy. That was 20 years, and I sold that in 2018 to the guys at 𝐂𝐶. They bought it, and that was a great event.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that and your other successes. Today, I want to talk about a couple different things, and we may get into a few other ones, but the two main things I want to talk about was overcoming fear as an entrepreneur, because I think this plagues everyone. And the second thing is building high-performing teams.
Right, sure.
Let's start with the fear aspect of it.
Yeah. I have been interviewed like a lot of times. I can't remember when anyone has started with that topic. And the reason that's so powerful, and I'm serious, I commend you on it, is because we could talk about this, as you know, for like a week, and we would never run out of room for content. But fear is the biggest prohibitor of people starting businesses, and worse than that, expanding them. Because all of us operate out of fear, scarcity. What's going to happen if I do something wrong? Story real quickly.
Sure.
When I got out of college, I couldn't cover my whole background because there's too much. But when I got out of college, I worked for a bank for about 9 months. And, you go from college and you have freedom of your schedule and, your life and all that stuff. And I get put in this little, what do they call it? Not incubator, little cube. And I'm staring at a computer all day. I hated it. I was there 9 months. And if I didn't quit, they would have fired me for sure. And I'm not being modest, man. I was out the door. They did not like me. I didn't like them. We were all even, you know what I mean? So I get out. And my old man did landscaping when I was a very young kid. I mean, 5, 6 years old. I used to go around with him, and I learned how to, cut lawns and weed gardens and do mulching and plant plants. I knew that. So I got out of the bank. I'm going to get to your point. I got out of the bank and I started a landscaping business before I went to grad school because I knew how to do that. I mean, I did all that stuff during college. I'm sitting in a 1978 Volvo station wagon. I will never forget it, in Westport, Connecticut. I really want to nail your topic. It's a great topic. And I'm sitting in that Volvo station wagon, and all of a sudden it just hit me, man. Oh my goodness. Everything I've ever done in my life before this, I was associated with something. I played football in high school. I was president of my student government. I was in a college, right? I went to a high school. I had affiliation. And I am sitting in this Volvo station wagon, which I'm repurposing as a dump truck, by the way. Those things were big, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And you remember that. So I'm in Westport, Connecticut. I'm on the side of the road. I'm like, holy crap, I got fear. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I want to say this I love small business people. I can't believe we do what we do. We're all nuts. But I want to say this. I think one of the biggest prohibitors for people starting a business is that lack of affiliation to something. You know what I mean? You're on your own. And that hit me like a pall, man. It was like I'll never forget it. I remember the weather when this happened. 1986, like June. I remember everything about it. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, it's just me. So one of the big things, and you can tell I like this topic, but one of the things that I would say to everybody listening, right, is whether it's this podcast or something else, as entrepreneurs, we got to get affiliated to other things. Else you're going to feel alone. And you kind of are alone, right? So one of the big issues is just that sense of I'm alone. It's only me. I'm not tied to anything else. But that holds us back. But fear generally also does. But that's a big one. Like, hey, man, I'm afraid because I'm on my own.
Yeah, I mean, that realization of like, you're not part of a team that someone else is running and you just got to do your part. You are literally in charge of your own destiny at that point. And we've all been through that, but I can just picture that, what you were talking about, having that realization in that moment and, an oh crap kind of thought process. So after that, how have you seen in your own personal life, how is, the acknowledgement of the fear and then getting past that? What have you done to help you get past the fear of
that's a great question. I always say this. I say your desire for success, your desire, something inside of you, it's lacking or you want something better, you're striving, but your desire has got to be up here and your fear's got to be there. If your fear is here and your desire is here, you got big problem. But we got to keep your desire up here. So for me, I had incredible desire, like public speaking, like even this, like I get tight sometimes. I've been doing this for years. It's crazy. I don't know why, but it's hard. You got to speak in public and you're putting yourself out there. But the more you do it over and over again, the better you get. But more importantly, it just becomes, it's not a big deal. So I really want to answer your question day by day. What am I going to do today? What's the obstacle right here, right in front of me? If you start thinking about things too far out, man, it's overwhelming. So maybe it's this whole thing of resilience. Why are some people resilient? Some people don't like to sell. They don't want to talk or speak. They don't want to start a business. That's a big, fear is a big one around that. But let's focus on what's right here today, day by day. My dad used to say, eat the whale one bite at a time, right? I mean, starting a business, I don't know much about podcasts, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's video and maybe it's just audio. I don't really know, but it doesn't matter. You are crazy to start your own business. Let's get that out of the way. You are crazy. Who does this? You're trying to start a business. You don't really know how to run a business. Maybe you do, but the risks are way up here, right? And I think the point is that if you get caught too much in the fact that you're crazy, and Brad, I don't know, you seem like a good guy, but you're crazy too, right?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely crazy.
Anyone who starts a business is a little insane. It's, because any rational person would say, wow, I don't want the hassles of payroll. I don't want customers yelling at me. I don't, like on this podcast, right? You put yourself out here, Brad, you're going out to your community. I don't want to put myself out there, right? So there's incredible fear and uncertainty. So the way I deal with it, and I've been good at it, is just one day at a time, and one obstacle at a time. And I've done landscaping, laundromats. I've painted houses. I did window washing. I ran a sizable tech company. It's a pretty big company actually, right? I've done it all, but it always starts with what's in front of you right now today and focus on that. And I don't know where you get that from, but you need it.
So it sounds like really just, it sounds cliche, but like literally just putting the next step in front of you. Like, what's the next step I got to do? What is the very next thing? And I don't know if you know this or not, Brian, I was in the military. I went into the Marines after high school, and they tell us in the Marines, like when you're going through boot camp specifically, it's pretty tough. Like boot camp's pretty tough, right? And they say you just go from one chow to the next, one meal to the next. So you get up in the morning, you just got to get to breakfast, and then after breakfast, you just got to make it to lunch, and then after lunch, you got to make it to supper. And if you do that mentality, which is what you're saying, is just like the next thing in front of you, what's the next obstacle, what's the next waypoint, GPS point or whatever, then you wake up 12, 13 weeks later and you've graduated from boot camp.
Yes.
But if you think about, I got to do this for the next 12 weeks, I got to bust my butt and, go endure this. It's overwhelming. So I love that analogy of just focusing on the next thing you need to do.
Yeah. I know, by the way, my dad was in the Marines. So when I was 18, I was going to join the Marines. He's like, you don't need to join. You've already been in the Marines 18 years, So, on your point though, like every single day I write out this, like I guess you can't see it, but my to-do list on, hey, what am I going to get done today? And once you get motion, right, then you can get over that fear. But, you got to just focus. Yeah. Like boot camp. Absolutely. Yeah. If you think, oh my God, it's going to be 12 weeks or 16 weeks or whatever, that's overwhelming. But if it's, I got to get from here to lunch, we can do that.
I heard this analogy one time and I love it. And I've said it before, like the way I see fear in business is like driving a car, and the success or the vehicle is your business, and you're pushing the gas to try and go fast, right? You want to try and go faster, get momentum, try to get to where you're going. But fear is you stepping on the brake.
Yeah.
And so what happens a lot of times is people they're pushing on the gas as hard as they can. It's like, I don't understand. I'm stomping on this gas to the floor. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not getting any momentum. And if you got your foot on the brake, like the car's not going to go anywhere. You know what I mean? And so like that fear is what's holding you back from taking risks.
So the thing is, like, how do we get people through that? And so for me, today I focus on day by day what I need to do, but I do make goals. I know this is just basic stuff, but even it's like going to church. We've all heard the sermons before, but we go and we need to be retaught, right? I make goals like 1-year goals, 5-year goals. You see, I want to get that vision. And I want to get that drive up here because all my risks, I got tons of risk. I got fear. I got all that stuff here. And I don't want that stuff over my drive. So, I've done a lot of visioning in my life and like trying to picture myself maybe in a better house or whatever. I know you focus on contracting, but I can tell a man or a woman, hey, look, if your labor dollars are $10, you're going to probably charge about $30. You got to cover your labor. You got to cover your overhead, and you need about a 30% margin. I can teach a contractor that, right, to bill on labor dollars. What I can't teach, well, we want to teach them, right, how do we get over the big obstacles around fear and sort of what's in here in your mind? You got to have those types of visions. But I don't know if you know it, but I started an outfit 32 years ago. It's probably the only thing I'll ever be remembered for, frankly. It's called Inmates to Entrepreneurs. And the idea is that people get out of prison, it's hard for them to get a job. As an entrepreneur, let's help them start their own small business. Makes sense to me, right? I started that with Reverend Harrison. I was about 27, 28. My point is this. As Rev used to say, you don't have to be in prison to be locked up. There's prisoners walking, or inmates, whatever, right? Judicially involved people walking all around us, right? We're locked up over here. So that's where the game is. When I'm working with the people who have been in prison, Brad, just like the rest of us, they're just like the rest of us, right? But I can teach them how to advertise. I can teach them Google AdWords. But you got to get beyond that psychology of that you are an inmate, and how are you going to not think of yourself that way? So this stuff is, what you're doing is very important. Getting the information out there, then people feel community with contractors, but yeah, it's all up there. And you know this, all the obstacles you're going to get, especially if you try to grow your business. Because I always say to people, look, man, have a 1-person business or a 1,000-person business. Don't do anything in between. Oh my goodness, you can do the work. And over here, you got scale out of your company. But between 1 and 1,000 is no man's land. That's hard, right?
Yeah.
And many of us have 5, 10, 15, 20 employees. That's super hard. And that's risky and all that. But what I'm trying to say is, if you're working all the time on how do I vision myself having a big business or selling that business or profitable with, maybe you want a new house, maybe you're someone who has been in prison and you want to be viewed differently by your friends, you got to keep that high. So it really is a mind game.
Well, and I'm sure you would agree with this, but it's also who you, like you said about, being isolated, it's who you surround yourself with, right? Like, I mean, the circles that you run, you've heard, you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And there is truth in that.
Yeah.
I mean, the community of whoever you're around is going to have a huge impact on whether you have a lot of fear, if you have success or not. I mean, speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. I don't like the word blue collar, but lower middle class, whatever it was. But when I was growing up, we didn't have money. My father he didn't even graduate from high school, but he had something better than a college degree. And they don't teach this in college, unfortunately, wisdom. My father had wisdom. He said, look, man, you could be the smartest person in the world, but you don't have wisdom. They don't really always teach that in college, as you know. Example, he used to say, because of my environment where I was raised, we had it all, man. We had a lot of stuff out there to stay away from. And he's like, look, he goes, stuff he'd say to me, I never thought about till I got old. He goes, the devil's playground is idleness. The devil's playground is who you hang out with. But you're right. Like, get in a reference group of people who are going somewhere. And again, when I'm working with people who are getting out of prison, we all have this challenge, but sometimes they have a bigger challenge on this, right? Going back to the old crowd, they're going nowhere, or actually they are going somewhere, but you don't want to go there, right? And I always think back to my dad. Hey, hang out with people who you want to be like. And my kids don't listen to me. No kids listen to their parents, but I try to drill that into them. Dude, you can say what you want, but you got to get around people who you want to be like. You're right. I never heard that we're the sum or the average of the 5 people we hang out with, but it's true.
I mean, the adage too of like, be the dumbest person in the smartest room, right? Don't be the smartest person in the dumbest room.
That's true. That's true. Learn, and that's the other thing I'd say is being open, right? Like, what I have learned in my experience, I'm a little bit older than you, but are you open, right? Do you really want to get better? Like, I have people come to me in IDE and like, they're coming out of prison. Like, well, do you really want to get better, man? Do you really want to do it, right? Then you're going to be open to feedback. And I can tell real quickly when people are not open. And a lot of people are closed. So you got to be open and willing to learn. And then if you are, you'll get through it. I want to say this because I don't know, obviously I don't know all the people in your audience, but I'd say if you work hard and you're open, you're learning, you're working hard, you're going to make it. I have seen very few examples of where people have failed. If they're open, they're working hard, and they're around the right people, and they're gaining knowledge. But if you ain't open, forget it.
I lived through the opposite of this. So after the military, I had several jobs, and then I ended up getting into construction. I started out as a superintendent for a developer, and then became a construction manager, and then I went to work for a carpenter, and I was a finished carpenter. Then I started my own business. When I started my own business, it wasn't that I thought I knew everything and like I was the smartest person, but I definitely had the ego of thinking I can figure this out on my own, right? It wasn't like I know what to do. It's like I'm capable of figuring it out. And that really stunted me. Really the first 9 years of being in business was always a challenge because I was trying to figure it out on my own, didn't surround myself with the right people. Also, this was in 2008, 2009. And so like there wasn't, there weren't Facebook groups. There wasn't YouTube videos that you could go watch and learn. And there wasn't as much access to information, right? Which was another barrier. But once I was like, okay, once I came to the realization, I said, I cannot figure this out on my own. I've done it for almost 9 years with very minimal success, a little bit, but nothing major. I started looking for other people. I started looking for coaching. I started looking for groups. I started watching videos. I
Right.
started, being more open-minded to trying different
Yeah.
ways because my way hadn't worked. And once I did that, that's when I started having a lot of success.
Yeah.
That's when I started, when I was open-minded, I started achieving a lot of more success in a very short
Yeah.
period of time. And so I agree with you 100%. Speaking from the other side of that, of like being closed-minded for so long,
Yeah.
the clients of mine that have the most success that come in are the most open-minded. They do
That's right.
exactly what if I tell them to do something or suggest something, they take it, they just take action. They don't make excuses. They're very open-minded. They're very moldable. They're very coachable. Those are the ones that have the greatest success.
Yeah. Actually, play the movie a little bit further. That's fascinating. I never thought about it. So again, I've been doing this like a long time, right? Muscle memory, like hitting a tennis ball or a baseball, or throwing a football, it's muscle memory. My mind, it's fascinating. I never thought of this. I mean, through many years of experience, hard experience, especially like you said in the beginning, right? My mind, you ask me anything, Brad, like anything, right? My mind now automatically goes to who else has solved that? I don't want to solve that.
Mm.
I want to save time. So to honestly, I'm learning here. I'm learning because I don't even think about that. Like if there's a business challenge, I'm like, well, somebody else has solved that, right?
Yep.
And go to them. I imagine you have some guys probably in your audience, and I think I'm a guy. You never know these days, right? But I'm a guy. So men, wow, we got this thing called ego and testosterone, and all this crap that we're dealing with every day, and it locks us up, right? We don't want to take directions from somebody, right? We want to go do it ourselves. And I'm like, not good for an entrepreneur. So I didn't think about that, but I would say your first starting block whenever that you're faced with something large, right? Oh no, I don't want to solve it. Somebody else has solved that. Let's leverage that. And I never thought about that, but that's a great point.
Yeah, I even told my employees this. I'm like, you don't need to make the same mistakes that I did. I already paid for those.
Yeah.
So let's put steps and processes in place so that you don't make the same mistakes because I already paid for them with my own money and time
Yes.
and anguish. Like, let's just bypass that. So when
Yeah.
you get stuck or if you can't figure something out, then let's talk about it. But we don't need to make the same mistake. It doesn't need to be repeated.
So again, suppressing the ego. And again, like, is my ego here and my desire for success here? Oh no, we want our ego down here. We want our drive. And if we're open and we're really driven, we're going to seek advice from other people. So that's a good point. But that's where I start with everything.
Hey, just a quick time out from the show. If you're a frustrated contractor who's dealing with low profit margins, stuck working on the tools every day, or doing free estimates for people who are never going to hire you in the first place, I invite you to my private contractor community, the Profit Club, where contractors just like you are adding 2 to 3 times more profit each year without producing any more jobs and finally getting completely off the tools to never do another free estimate again. So if you're ready to increase your profits, stop doing free estimates and get off the tools, then all you have to do is click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Profit Club and see how I can easily 2 to 3 times the cash in your pocket, give you a proven sales process that will convert more jobs with ease and get you off the tools once and for all. And the best part is you can do all of this without having to produce more jobs than you currently are. Click the link to learn more. Now let's get back to the show. One of my first videos because I have a course that goes along with my coaching, and one of the first videos in there is called Ego Suppression.
Oh,
Because
really?
it's like you have to suppress your ego. You have to eliminate it. Not only from, getting advice, but if you have a customer who's not happy with something you did,
Yes.
and you have an ego and you think that you did okay, you're not going to be open or to receiving feedback, which could totally change your business.
Yes.
You're just going to go on the defense and just be like, what do you know? I've been doing this 20 years. You don't know what you're talking about. So even ego from that perspective can definitely hurt your business.
Yeah, well, customers, wow, that's a huge thing. And let's talk about that. That's massive, right? We all like to think, we all do this. We're human beings, right? But we like to think that when we're dealing with customers, we can fool people, or we can mouth out the words, but they won't know who we are. So if you build a deck for somebody or whatever, they're not happy with it. First of all, we're not going to argue with the customer. That's stupid. That's the person paying you the money. My goodness. And I'm lucky because of my background where I've always been I've appreciated customers so much, giving me money, that it's hard for me to think any other way. But that's not the point. I'm hoping that everybody who's listening to this or watching it doesn't argue with their customers. Let's assume that's true, even though it's not. It's when you're communicating with them, right? They can read what you think of them. No matter what you say, as people, we all want to think, we're all smarty pants, especially if you go on and get educated, and we're all smarty pants. And we want to think if we mouth out the words, right, but our heart is not right with regard to that customer service, that the customer's not going to know. And people always know whether you like them. They always do. You cannot fool people. I'm telling you. You think you can. But that element of service, man, unbelievable service. Do you know, I don't want to talk about, I guess I have to talk about me a little bit. That's the whole point here. But every company I've been involved with, yes, massive customer service, obsessive customer service. The customer is always right. It is true. And I have to teach this at my company all the time. I taught at my last company. The customer's always right. No, they're not always right. Well, I know they're not technically right, but they got the money last time I looked, right? And think of it this way. Did that customer force you to do business with them? Did they force you to do that at gunpoint? Probably not. You made a decision to select that customer. Isn't this it's a little aggravating, right? Brad, people are listening to, I don't agree. Well, you cannot agree, but you're wrong in this case. You selected that customer. You own that while you're engaged with that customer. Now, afterward, if you never want to work with them again, no problem. But you have to take ownership of that relationship. And listen, Brad, the whole contracting thing, I'm from a family, 46 cousins, Irish, we're good at having kids. All my uncles, my dad, were contractors. I'm like a fish in the water, like the water's hitting me everywhere. It's all I know is contracting because I was part of it. And what I'm trying to say to you is, man, show up on time, do what you say you're going to do, and like your customers, please. If you do that, you're going to grow your business. These are not complicated formulas.
No, they're not. I agree with you 100%. And I get amusement out of, I'm in several different Facebook group communities for contractors and stuff. Almost on a weekly basis, I'll see a post. It's like, hey, I'm dealing with this customer who's turned out to be a nightmare client. They're not wanting to pay. They're complaining, blah, 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 blah. And usually, if you go back and look at all of the facts, usually there were plenty of red flags.
Right.
Whenever they were talking to this customer in the very beginning, they just ignored them.
Yes,
because they were looking at it from a transactional
they wanted
standpoint.
The job.
Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I need money. They have money. Let's make it work. And I'm like, you guys, this is like getting married. Like you're getting into relationships with people. You really have to look deeper than just that transactional of that. It's way more than that, especially on like construction stuff. Maybe not if you're going to the coffee shop. It's not a huge relationship there. But when you're doing a $50,000, $100,000 project, there's a relationship there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And unfortunately, but by the way, I don't want to be patronizing. I really don't. I don't mean it that way from my heart, but I've made every single mistake under the book. And I could tell you stories all day. You could tell me stories all day, but screening your customers is really important in contracting, especially, you're right, if it's more than 2 weeks, oh my goodness, you got to view it as a marriage. But while you're in the marriage, you're freaking married. And your job is to make that customer happy. And by the way, newsflash, some people are never happy, right? And you're going to run into those people. But we own that while we're in it. And can I just tell a really quick thing?
Sure.
A little ditty here.
Yeah.
So the guy gets out of prison. Nice guy, Ron. Big guy. He's got the tattoos everywhere, but strong, tough guy out of prison. He was in there for 15 years. I don't know what he did. I was working with him. And he used to have a painting business before he was in prison. So he's starting a painting business. He's got to get his first job. So I say, well, go out, instead of painting that house for $5,000, do it for $3,000. I'm going to keep it very short. So he goes out and he does the job for $3,000. He probably makes the equivalent of $40, $50 an hour. Pretty good, right? It's all attitude, man. Brad, good guy. I really like him. Tough guy, very in your face. My kind of person, right? He could never get beyond the fact that he could have gotten $5,000 instead of $3,000. He couldn't get beyond it. It's all he kept talking about. Like, dude, this is your first customer. You got a reference. You got some money. You made pretty good money per hour. You had to do the work yourself. But having gratitude, I've done this hard work, by the way. I really have. So do you understand what I'm trying to say? Focus on what you did get, and that will change your attitude toward that person. And that said, there are difficult people.
Yeah. There's definitely strategies especially when you're first starting out, but having gratitude is definitely a secret weapon, if you ask me. I feel sorry for people that don't have gratitude. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I do. And especially with customers, because again, we cover so much in half an hour, man. It's hard to cover it all. But when you start it the way I did, it's like, oh my goodness, someone's giving me money. It wasn't even really gratitude, Brad. It was more like, wow. I was more shocked that people would give me money to do work. So I was conditioned for that very early on. But if you've been given a lot of things, I think it's hard to have gratitude, if not impossible. So, but yeah, like that sort of, the love of the customer. Contracting, sometimes I wish I could go back to it. I miss doing the landscaping. I actually miss the physical work. I've got a farm. You can't see it here. I do a lot of it with the crews out here. But contracting is something, you're working with your hands. I'm in technology, man. It's like abstract. But having the gratitude for that customer and doing that work, it's essential. And just getting that money,
Well, that's, money. Getting money is an important part of having a successful business.
Oh, yeah. And making profit, yeah. By the way, last one, I don't know what you want to cover, man, unless you have other things, but be careful the way you price. It's amazing how many contractors are out there working for free and they don't know it.
Oh, that's literally what I preach every single day, Brian.
Really?
Every single day. I know we talked about building high performance teams. I think that's going to be a little bit too much to get into in this last bit here, but we can transition to getting feedback from customers, because this is really a good segue from what we just talked about. So, soliciting customer feedback, and then obviously how we can apply that to our business.
Right. Yeah. Surveys. I always like to meet with the customer. Hey, what did we do well? What did we not do well? How can we improve service? How can we, and I got to say, I know people here don't know me, so I don't want to be too preachy, but I got to tell you, man, I'm on this farm, built a house out here. I've got contractors all the time. It never happens to me. It never happens to me.
They never ask you for feedback?
No. And I'm like, hey, guys, come on. So I'm just saying that can set your business apart, but getting that feedback, and you'd be surprised. I'll give you something, and I don't know, I don't want to offend anybody here, but I was raised with a bit cigarette smoking family. Oh my God, there's cigarettes everywhere, right? They're just everywhere. When I was growing up, and I was one of these people, I didn't gravitate toward it. I gravitated away from it. I was just like, oh, man. So anyway, I get people come out the farm and they're dropping their rets all over the place. I'm like, dude, but the point is that's okay. But if some of these contractors came to me, right? Hey, is there something we could do better? Yeah. Hey, just watch the guys dropping the cigarettes out, probably because someone has to pick up after them, Like, my point is, if you interview the customers afterward, maybe a survey, something, you'll pick up things that maybe you're a smoker, it wouldn't occur to you. But if you're not asking that question post job, how do you get better? It's such a simple thing, isn't it? Like, some of you folks are married. Oh my goodness, talk about tough relationships, right? Do any of us go home and say, hey, honey, what can I do better to be a husband or a wife? Does anybody do this? No. But that's the essence of the relationships, right? And I'm fanatical about customer feedback. Just fanatical. And think about
Brian, I don't ask my wife anything because I don't want to get the laundry list of things I'm doing wrong. So I just don't ask her.
Well, I think you'd shock her, so you wouldn't have to worry about it. Really? You want me to do that? But it's always in the specific things. You know what I mean? Like little things that you don't see. And so, yeah, do a post-job interview. Hey, I need 5 minutes of your time. What did we do well? What can we improve on? And you're going to get so many referrals, it'll just knock your socks off.
That's actually interesting that you said that, because the fact that you ask the question, regardless of the answer, your customers are actually more impressed with the fact that you are asking
Yes.
them for feedback than the actual feedback. And so what you're really doing is you're really elevating yourself or your company by the simple act of asking for
Yeah,
feedback.
just the beautiful thing about business. It's so beautiful. Show up on time. Make sure your pricing is good. You got to make money. If we don't make money, this ain't fun. You know what I mean? I don't care what anyone says. By the way, I've done that. I've done it, right? Not making money, not fun, right? But you price the right way. You get feedback from your customers. Incorporate that into your business. Keep your vision strong, right? To get over your fears and work hard. It takes freaking hard work too. But yeah, these are the basic things. But I would say, again, I've been in real estate. I didn't put everything in here because I've been all over the board, except for my last company. That I spent 20 years dedicated to that. But I used to do home renovations to pay my way through college. And so I've dealt with a lot of contractors. But yeah, people don't ask that question, how can I do better? And you're right, that elevates you to a whole different level.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm like the opposite. And I used to, well, tie this back into the ego. If you have an ego, you generally won't ask for feedback because you think you know everything. You think you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
They hired me because I'm the best contractor.
yeah,
That's all I need to know, right? I'm the opposite. Like, I'm like a feedback
right,
Nazi. Like, I want feedback at every step of the
right.
way. Relentlessly asking for feedback about everything.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know you real well, obviously, but my desire from feedback, my suppression of ego has come because of massive failure. When I was 20, I thought I knew everything. I ain't 20 anymore, but I thought I knew everything. So I was not open. But then I had to fail at things and have my head slammed into the cement probably multiple times, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that gets you more open. So I'm like you now, but it took me a while to get there. And I had to have my ego just smashed into the ground.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, that's how a lot of us learn, right? Through failure.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Um,
true.
but if you have a very fragile ego, sometimes that failure will just end it for you because you can't handle
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, my kids say, Dad, you're always talking metaphysics. And so I can't understand what you're saying. I'm like, well, welcome to the club. Neither do my employees, right? But on a serious note, I'd say to you that ego is about serving you.
Yeah.
What's important to you? You said you were a husband, right? Yeah. What's important to you? And the opposite of that is, how can I serve you? How can I serve you? And man, if you can be on how you serve people, the world is going to be a path to your door. And so again, it's an internal game. So that's just the way it is.
I remember, I'll tell a story real quick. I remember a friend of mine, I went to high school with him. He was a couple years below me. We played soccer together. And later on in life, he called me to do some repairs at his house. And so, we reconnected, and he had just started a e-commerce business. And he would call me like every 6 months or whatever to do stuff even at his business. And he grew he rapidly grew this from his garage to a multi-million-dollar business. Very successful, gentleman. And so he called me one day
Yeah.
to do some work on a deck, putting in like a waterproofing, under deck system
Yeah.
for a patio. And I remember this, kind of like when you had your epiphany in the car, the realization, like
Right.
we were doing some work, and he came home early, whatever. And he came out on the deck. He's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Oh, we're dealing with this, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you guys? Is there anything I can get you, water, anything I can do for you?"
Right.
And very servanthood, like you were talking about. And he
Yes.
was he owned a
Right.
multi-million-dollar business. He could
Right.
have had the ego. He could have been a jerk if he
Yes.
wanted to. But even in the
Yeah.
fact of like, here I am, just the not the downgrade, but just the contractor, and he's the multimillionaire. He
Right.
was still trying to serve me in that instance, and I remember that to this day.
Yeah. That actually makes me feel better, by the way, because the guys come on the farm. I've got big farm here, but my house is here too. And like they come on and we get them, the guys here, we always get them like, cookies or lunch or something like that. But I can relate to them because I did this type of work. You know what I mean? But yeah, I didn't think of that. But by the way, if you ever get customers listening too, like, hey man, the work's hard, like I wish I could do another podcast for the customers because sometimes you got, I'm just being honest, right? You wonder if they've ever like picked up a hammer in their life, you know what I mean? And been through the struggles, but some of them haven't. We just have to deal with it. But, having some appreciation as a customer too. I see these guys, I live in North Carolina. Like, these guys are working on this. They're putting in this tennis court over here and a bunch of landscaping. I'm like, oh my goodness. I used to do that. So I can appreciate that, But obviously not all your customers are going to be that way.
No, it's a funny thing. Whenever I have someone that's coming to work on my house, if it's like we had a washer repair man, bought a brand new washer and it's already leaking, so they sent out a warranty. Tech comes out. Right. I just pretend like I don't know anything about construction because I really want to see, like, if they're just feeding me a bunch of BS.
Yeah, interesting. That's fascinating.
But I know enough to know whether or not I'm being.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Plus, I also don't want them to be uncomfortable of like, oh, this guy thinks he knows everything and he's going to be over my shoulder watching every second. And I don't want, I don't want to be that customer either because I've had those customers.
Yeah, I could tell some stories on that one. Oh my goodness. So there's bad customers out there too. For sure. I get it.
Yeah. Well, Brian, we're coming to an end here. I wanted to give a chance to talk about your new business that you've started up here, invested in. I don't really know exactly what your position is in the company, but I know that you're part owner, I'm assuming.
So it's LiveSwitch, and we help. Well, we're on here. Just to be honest, I if you look at my career, you can Google this. I help small business. I love doing it, but we're also partly on here. I guess I'm in LiveSwitch, and we have video technologies and tools to help contractors to do estimates remotely or quickly or virtually, we call it, and document their work and stuff like that. But I'm not going to go further than that. I don't want to do an advertisement, but I sold Sageworks in 2018. I'm in LiveSwitch now, and I'm proud of some of the stuff that we've developed. And what I really love is that it's specifically for small businesses. So
I love it. I was on your website beforehand, looking at, watching some of the stories that you have. And this is actually something that a lot of my clients would probably be interested in, just because if you work with me, like, we don't do free estimates anymore. We charge for consultations. Right. And so part of that is getting pictures or video so that we have a general idea of what the customer wants. And this would actually work really well for that sales process because they can record a video and that's obviously a lot better than pictures. So right. I was interested in it. It's something that you guys should definitely check out. During COVID, this would have been amazing. Zoom basically quadrupled because of COVID, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and ours we don't compete with Zoom, but I'm not going to advertise. Yeah. But yeah. Contractors and home service businesses use our product. So I appreciate the plug. Yep.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good product. So it's something that you guys should definitely check out. We'll have links to it in the show notes for you to go check it out. But there's definitely, it's not for every single person, but there's definitely a situation that, there's definitely businesses that would hugely benefit from it. So I do appreciate you being on the podcast, Brian, and sharing your experiences, your knowledge. Fear is such a big thing holding us back, and we got to really address that. So I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, and I appreciate your starting with that, by the way. That's literally the first time I've done all these formats, but that's number one right there is fear. So you nailed it.
Well, we talk about all the time because I have a book that recently came out, and it's called The Contractor Profit Blueprint. There's 4 steps, and the very first step is mindset mastery.
Yeah.
Because to the painter guy and everyone else, like the one you were talking about, if you don't think you can charge more, then you're never going to be able to charge more, period. End of story.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
So
you actually do become what you think of. Absolutely.
Yep.
Best book I ever read, As a Man Thinketh, 16 pages. As a Man Thinketh, 16 pages.
Well, that was actually my next question was, what's a book that you recommend? And you just beat me to it. So As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. You know that one.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich. I love that one. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Powerful. You've probably read that one too.
Yeah.
And those are, you read those three, you don't need any other one.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Brian Tracy?
Highly Effective People. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But going back to your point, and I'd like to, I guess afterward, I'll get a copy of your book. I'll order it wherever it is. But I like the way you're thinking because it starts with the mindset. And at Inmates to Entrepreneurs, that's what we've been teaching for 32 years. I mean, if you don't get that right, forget it.
Yep. Yeah, you've already lost before you started. So,
Yep.
Well, Brian, again, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We'll have some links in the show notes for LiveSwitch. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, do you have a preferred method or?
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, I got an easy one because I have a foundation. Brian, BRIAN at brianhamilton.org. Brian at brianhamilton.org. And of course, the company I'm with now and invested in is liveswitch.com. But if you want to reach out to me directly about anything I said today, I always love to hear from people.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Brian, for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, brother. Good stuff.
Guys, that's the end of the show. Thanks for hanging out with us. Tons of great information. Go to the show notes to get links for Brian's information as well as any of the stuff that I have. You can order the book there as well. And you know where to find me on the social medias. Just search for the Hammer and Grind podcast. You can find me there. And until next time, guys, remember, profit is not a dirty word.